very excited about it. This is the only one of the sessions that's going to be live streamed. So when we get to that portion of the conversation where people are asking questions, if you can help us out and make sure that there's a mic. So I know it's frustrating to just have some mic being sent to you, but that's what we're going to do so that people who are attending this conference live can hear some of those questions and hear some of those responses. So again, we have a full crowd today. We're really excited about this. I'm excited to introduce Latisha McNeil to you. She's an accomplished public servant with over 18 years of extensive experience in criminal justice and community safety sectors. In her role as the director of the City of Greensboro Community Safety Department, Latisha spearheads innovative operations designed to enhance public safety through community-driven initiatives. Since the office's inception in September of 22, she has successfully championed transformative programs such as the Behavioral Health Response Team, Law Enforcement Assistant Diversion Program, and the GSO Peace on Purpose Violence Prevention Initiative, all of which prioritize holistic approaches to safety and well-being. Latisha's experience extends beyond Greensboro, as she has consulted with many municipalities across the nation on the civilian oversight of law enforcement, contributing to the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement Training and Standards Committee. Her collaborative efforts with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice have focused on developing effective community police and co-production policies. With that, Tricia, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Latisha McNeil, and I normally like to walk around, but I have been told that I need to stay here, so it's going to be a little bit different, but we're going to make it work. So I am very excited to be here this morning and to speak with you all about this topic. I think in the role of CVI, in the world of CVI, this is a hot button discussion. People want to talk about the role of law enforcement. Where does law enforcement fit into the CVI space? So we'll get started. So we'll just, I'm gonna first start with, at least can I turn this way a little bit? Okay, I'm like, oh Lord, okay. So we're gonna define this is the wrong one. This is the wrong slide. Hold on, but it's okay. It's all right, because this one, the pictures of myself are not on here. Y'all, that's really what's missing, just so y'all. Because I was like, wait, why are there no pictures of me? I know that was a little vain, but whatever. So we're going to talk about what CVI is and how it differs from community-oriented policing strategies, the importance of law enforcement in CVI. We're going to outline the role of law enforcement in CVI, then we're going to have discussion and questions. So community violence intervention is a strategy that uses evidence-based approaches to reduce violence in communities. CVI programs are tailored to the specific needs of a community and focus on individuals who are most likely to be victims of or commit crimes. CVI programs work with both survivors and perpetrators of violence, who are often the same people. They provide resources and services and use qualified messengers to interrupt cycles of violence. So I wanted to just put an official title, definition there, just so we can kind of level set the room. So a couple of important things about CVI work is it's community centered. I mean, community is at the forefront of what is being done. These strategies, oftentimes people go to communities and they tell them, we have this thing for you, or sometimes they feel like we are doing this thing to you. But CVI work should be done with community. And that is one of the key components that a lot of times we're missing, especially in government spaces. We see a need, we want to address an issue, we want to come in and help, but sometimes our help looks like telling someone what to do instead of co-producing those results with them. And that is a key and important point of how we move the work of CVI forward and how we do it in a collective manner together. It's equitable and inclusive, And we want to make sure that those who are closest to the problems, closest to the issues related to community violence are also the ones who are at the forefront of developing the solutions to those issues. So again, referring back to being community-centered. It's evidence-informed. There's a lot of, CVI is not new. The term is new, but the work ain't new. You know, people have been in community for a long time, working, doing things that they needed to do to ensure that their communities not only survive, but thrive. And, you know, we all have our definition of what well-rounded and thriving communities look like. And so it's important for us to remember that community has been working for community from the beginning and will continue to work for community. So it's effective and sustainable. Main thing is we want this to be sustainable. We want the work of CVI to be a part of the public safety continuum. So I'm going through all these kind of fast so we can get to the meat of why I think you all are all here, because I think a lot of this stuff, you know, you've read, you've seen. So again, CVI strategies are community-centered, and they are driven by community. Community is an active stakeholder and collaborator, and we co-produce together for the work. All right, so let's get to it. So, keys to understanding. May I ask questions of the audience too? Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, so keys to CVI and law enforcement. One of the things that I think is an important term to understand when we are discussing what this looks like is professional understanding. Anybody want to tell me what they think? I know that that's up there. But in your opinion, from your work, what do you think a professional understanding between CVI organizations and law enforcement is? I mean, everybody don't raise their hand. Okay, thank you.
I think professional understanding is having that complete, competent communication with each other, what each other's roles are, and what each other's responsibilities are. And I think when you can have that competent communication and you fully understand those things, then you have that professional understanding.
Okay. Brother in the back.
They can't hear you online. You got people coming.
I would add to exactly what he said, just one extra word, and that would be boundaries, roles, responsibilities, and then boundaries, particularly because with community, there are sensitivities in the work that's happening, particularly around violence and the professionals that's in that environment.
One more? Because what I'm hearing is right.
Yep, I'm coming.
No, I think it's the recognition that you're both working towards that you're all working towards the same goal, just taking different approaches and respecting that you have different approaches, but you're on the same team, so to speak.
All right. So everybody that answered is correct, so that's wonderful. That means that, you know, my job is done. I'm gonna go sit down and finish my oatmeal. But no, you know, professional understanding it's just that. It's knowing what the role is of, you know, our CVI organizations, knowing the role of law enforcement, understanding those boundaries, which is a very important and key component to this work. You know, being solution focused and results focused. We want the same thing. We all want our communities to be safe. We all want there to be, you know, less violence in the community. We don't want whoever that individual is to be hurt. We want them to thrive. We don't want something to happen on Monday and then on Tuesday or Monday night, somebody's reacting to what's going on. So those are things that we know that we all want, and that's an important piece of this. So having the professional understanding is key. Wherever you are in your law enforcement CVI relationships, it is very important that you set the stage. You set the stage before you have conversations, before you just jump out and start doing things. And when you have these conversations with an understanding that there are aspects of law enforcement work that CVI organizations may not know. But there are also aspects of CVI work that law enforcement agencies may not know. So understand that we are coming to this as subject matter experts in our respective fields, but we are coming together with a shared goal, and we're gonna lead from there. So some of our rules of engagement: understanding the historical harms that impact the relationship between law enforcement and community, especially communities of color. You know, wherever you are in your agency, understand the landscape of what has happened in your communities. And do not minimalize it. I don't want to hear that this was a long time ago and we should not worry about it and we need to move forward. We all know that. Everybody knows we need to move forward. But what we also need to do is acknowledge that something happened, because I guarantee you that when you say we just need to move forward, there are people in that room, in that space, that are directly impacted by whatever that thing is, and what you've done in that moment is you've lost them. They say, okay, well, they don't care, because they won't acknowledge the thing that has happened, you know. And I don't know if I said I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. Okay, I'm not originally from Greensboro, North Carolina. Let me take that back. I'm originally from Sanford, North Carolina. This is live stream, so I need to say I'm from Sanford, North Carolina, because if I say I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, somebody going to call my granddaddy, and Thanksgiving is going to be rough. But yeah, I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. I grew up there the majority of my life. And so, you know, Greensboro, we are home of the sit-in movement. But we have had other instances and situations that have happened within our community that are very present and affect how we interact as a community today. And so it's important that we acknowledge the things that have happened. One of the great things about the Greensboro Police Department, I'm gonna go ahead and shout them out a little bit. Greensboro Police Department, one of the things that I love that they do, they take the recruits to the International Civil Rights Museum and as a part of their training. You know, they take them around to the sites where we had the massacre on November 10th, 11th, same year I was born, so I'm not gonna, the day I was born, November 11th, 1979. We had a massacre. There was a march and individuals were killed, and there's a site that's dedicated to that. So they take them there so that they can understand the history. They can understand where, you know, when you interact with someone and there's a space of distrust, you understand where it comes from. It's not just because I don't like you or because, you know, something in the music or whatever. It's more than that. So acknowledging that is important. And also understanding that there are individuals who are coming back into the community and they may have done harm. You know, so from the law enforcement standpoint, I know Latisha when Latisha used to be out there heavy in the street. And, you know, I was a rookie cop. I arrested Latisha 12 times. I know her, you know, she was struggling. She cussed me out. She did all of these things. Fast forward 20 years later, Latisha's back in the community, but now Latisha's in the community with a different focus and mission. And that mission is to do good and repair the harms that she may have caused in the community. And it's important that we allow each other the space to be able to do that and start from there. Don't look at individuals with the suspicion on either side. It's, you know, we have to remember that. We have to remember that harms have been done. We also have to remember that we need to acknowledge them and we need to set our expectations on how we're moving forward. So, you know, one of the other things we need to be doing is making sure that we're coordinating at supervisor level and above. Law enforcement, you don't need to be talking to the frontline worker, okay? I'm gonna say it again. You do not need to be talking to the frontline worker. I'm saying that in this space, and I mean it. I mean it with all of my heart. Because when you show up to work, you've got a badge, you've got a gun, you've got a taser, you've got a tool belt, you have backup, you have a radio. If something happens to you, there is a hero's funeral, and you will deserve it. But if something happens to one of these individuals out here doing this work, you know what happens? They say, man, this thing happened to them, and tomorrow, all right, y'all get back to work. Their families are not supported. They're not given compensation. I spoke with the individual in Baltimore last week who was shot while working. He's a violence interrupter, was shot. Came back to work with the cast on and went right back. You know what they gave him? Nothing. So remember that when you're doing this work. When you are sitting here saying, well, I don't like that they won't talk to me. Well, what are they hiding? Because it's not that they're hiding anything, they're protecting themselves. And what we may not understand is regardless of where we live in this state, you may think, oh, I know everybody, I know all the players. But remember, when you show up as your law enforcement self. When they show up as themselves with whatever credibility that they have from being in the community. But they ain't showing up with a gun, because they probably can't have a gun. I mean, let's just be honest, okay? Can't have a gun, okay? You know, they're not showing up with a taser. They're not showing up with a vest. Can't have that either. So just remember that as you set the expectations for how that interaction looks like. But like I said, doesn't mean that you can't talk to the organization. You just don't need to be talking to the frontline workers. And that is okay. That's a part of the relationship. Just like there are individuals who, you know, in law enforcement agencies who may talk with, you know, other, you know, they may have their situations where they don't come to the office every day. They may be, you know, out in the street. They may have a different bank account. They may have an alias. All of these, whatever. It's the same thing. Somebody has a role that they have to protect themselves within that role. So remember that. And if you cannot get past that, if you can't get past that, don't do this work. That's, if I don't say anything else, I gotta say that. And I'm saying that as a person who comes to this space from, you know, working in probation, working in corrections, working in the court system, working in the criminal justice system. I'm coming to this space from that experience. But I'm telling you, as someone who has worked with individuals who their staff has been killed on the street because of the demands and the interactions where law enforcement came and were talking to them. And after they left, oh, well, you with them, now you're dead. And your credibility is gone. And once it's gone, you're not gonna get it back. So again, that I wanted to make, you know, emphasis on that because that's an important part. So showing professional courtesy to each other. Again, we all have relationships, especially if this is an individual who comes from your community, which a lot of times is the case. You have a relationship with that person. And the relationship may not have started positively, but you still should have a professional courtesy and respect for one another doing the work. Respect them doing the work on the ground as outreach workers, violence interrupters, frontline workers, and they should respect you as the law enforcement professionals. Understanding that they're not above the law, they're not trying to be above the law, but they have to operate in a certain level of credible space. And that means that they're not gonna tell you what's going on with everything. They can't tell you everything that's going on with, you know, and I I get frustrated with this because it's like, I understand the need to want to know what is happening in a situation. 100% I get it. But I also know that sometimes there are particular instances that only select individuals know. And if I start talking to you and I tell you this particular instance, now I've shown that I'm the one that lets you know this. And then also you may say to me, I'm not going to say anything. You can talk to me. It's fine. And then we get in a space and they're like, oh yeah, I know Latisha. She with such and such. Oh yeah. She's good people. They may say, yeah, okay. But you know what else? Somebody on the phone like, yeah, well, Latisha, they said that they were talking to her. And yeah, so then now credibility gone. And I'm in a community where I may live there. So I have inroads in my community, I'm working with my community, but now my credibility is gone. And now not only is my credibility gone, but I'm seen as someone that can't be trusted within my community. So that means that the interactions that I may have had in the past where I could go to somebody and actually make an effective change in a person's life, I can't do that anymore because they don't see me as a person that's there to help them. They see me as somebody that's just waiting to be able to tell something so I can be that snitch or informant, which they also are not. They are not your informants. They're not. What we are people who are working together to try to address issues, and we're addressing them with complementary strategies. That's what we're doing. And if we can keep that in mind, we can work together and create effective change, and we can save lives. Because I'm saying this because luckily, I'm so happy that we have not had instances of violence for our frontline workers like some of our other cities across the country have. Because when that happens, what do you do? As an office of violence prevention, the community safety department, we have violence prevention is one of our initiatives. What would I do in that instance? How would I be able to address and deal with that family, knowing that this person came to me, they wanted to be a help in our community, and I set them up for this type of outcome. So those are the things that we really need to be aware of going forward. So I think I stressed that enough. All right. Also, again, we're working on results-based accountability, and we want to make sure that we are allowing that to lead our discussions. We want to have organizational change, so we need champions, but we need champions in all ranks. One of the great things I will say is I live in a city where the law enforcement agencies are very supportive of this work from the top, and I appreciate that. But I need it from the top down and the bottom up. So I need a champion who is a rookie and a champion who is the chief. Because what happens is chiefs, I'm sure most of y'all in here are probably like chief level or so, y'all the big dogs in the department. You put out a mandate and say, this is what I expect. And it goes out on your email and the officers hear it and they're like, all right. Then you get the people who are a little further down the chain. They're like, yeah, here they go asking us to do that same thing again. They don't care. They just sitting in their ivory tower working, right? The email that you sent was one time. But if throughout the entire day, I hear officers on all different squads and all different areas talking negatively about the thing, whose voice is louder? So you need to find your champions in this work at all levels, not just at the top. Developing that communication strategy. Like I said, we've already talked about you not talking to frontline workers, but who are you talking to, right? Because you got to talk to somebody. You shouldn't be expected to just say, okay, well, y'all just trust us. Okay, but I still need to talk to somebody. So setting up what that communication looks like. I say that you need to talk to the executive directors and the supervisors, executive directors of these organizations and above. And if your city is lucky enough to have like a community safety department, Office of Community Safety, Violence Prevention Office, or is in the formation of that, the people in that office could be great conveners for you to establish what that communication looks like, and could be great spaces for that communication to happen, because they're not in the streets. So, and again, I said that they're not informants. So, buy-in is important. What happens when hits the fan? It will. It will. Something will happen. Let's just go ahead and put it out there. Something is gonna happen, y'all. It's and it's not always like when we say something happens, people may say automatically, oh, okay, well, a frontline worker did X, Y, Z. Sometimes it's not always a frontline worker that did the X, Y, Z. Sometimes it's, law enforcement officers who have this preconceived notion about these individuals and show up a certain kind of way and interrupt the events and talk down to them and do all of these things, and then there's an event that happens. We got to recognize that something's going to happen. But we also need to refer back to bullet 1, solution-based mindset. We want the same goal. In every relationship, there are ups and downs. Okay, people who are married, they love their spouse, right? But every day is not sunshine and rainbows. I do know that. But you have to keep at it, keep working, keep building. And that's what you need to be committed to doing in this work. And again, if you aren't at the point where that's what you want to do, then you may need to consider waiting. But I'll tell you this, your community's still working, because they've been working. So making sure that you have that game plan when something happens. Like when we first start, everybody's so excited. This is going to be great. It's going to be an opportunity for us to work together, and we all love each other, and yay. But we also better talk about what happens when we ain't loving each other. And I can tell you, I'm gonna call him out because he's in the room. So Chief Harris and myself have had a long-standing up and down relationship. We've had some knockdown, drag-out discussions. I've walked away in times I cannot stand him. But you know what I did? I went back to the table. I'm sure if I brought him up here, he would tell y'all probably not as much, because he's much nicer than I am. But, he's probably had times where I can't work with that. I can't work with that girl no more. But you know what happened? Came back to the table. Because at the end of the day, it's about getting the results. And the results that we want to see is we want to have less crime in our community. We want people to be connected to the service and resources that they need. We want them to be able to have multiple pathways to get what they want and to get what they need. Because here's the facts. There are some people in community that are not going to talk to police. It's okay, y'all. I promise. It is okay. And when I say that, sometimes, well, why not? Because they're not. Do you want to focus on why they're not going to talk to police, or do you want to focus on getting the job done? Because if I were you, I would want to focus on getting the job done. Because while you're worried about why they're not talking to you, is bodies dropping because something is happening and there's nobody in there intervening that they feel comfortable enough with to say, hey, well, you know what, Latisha y'all better go talk to her because she about to go out there because that was her little cousin that got shot last night. So that is an important piece of this work. Now, I said all that. We're going to briefly talk about where we do have opportunity for law enforcement to be at the table on a collaborative CVI strategy, which is group violence intervention, which, how many people are familiar with GVI in the room, group violence intervention strategies in the room? How many people are familiar with like call-ins? Call-in notifications, that type? Okay. So pretty much GVI strategies they incorporate that call-in, that that notification system. But what happens is law enforcement and community partners work together to identify folks who are at the highest risk and try to intervene before they get to the point where they have to press charges. You know, it may be that, hey, Latisha, we saw you out there. We, you know, we have some things where we could charge you with this, but we also know that you need an opportunity to do something different. So we call you in, and we have these community partners who are there, ready, available to offer you services and resources. Now, it will be in your best interest to go get some of these resources today, because if I see you next week, I'm gonna remember that I told you about this opportunity, and I'm gonna remember that you told me to go wherever I chose to tell them to go at that moment, and then it's gonna be a problem. So just making sure that we have these opportunities where we are working together. You know, we are collaborating, and we are getting to those individuals who are at the highest risk and providing them with services and resources, and doing that with law enforcement at the table, which is a very effective strategy. And it is something that sometimes it becomes a competition, right? You may say, oh, well, we're incorporating GVI strategies. Like when I talk to different law enforcement agencies and municipalities across the country, we're incorporating GVI strategies. We're not doing CVI. Okay, well, why can't you do both? I don't understand why you can't do both, because both can exist in a space and be effective. Because like I said before, there are some people that are just not going to talk to police. And there are some people who need to be able to have trusted individuals in the community that they can talk to. It is a part, this is all a part of public safety. Public safety is a continuum. There's a C before you get to the E. I mean, A, B, C, D, E, right. So there's a C before you get to the E. C, community. E, enforcement. It's still a part of the alphabet. It all works together. So, all right, so challenges and solutions. Like I said, organizational changes. And when I say organizational changes, this is not just for my law enforcement partners in the room. This is also for my CVI organizations in the room as well, because there are some people say, oh no, we don't talk to police. We don't work with them at all. We don't have anything to do with police. No, Okay, so you're just gonna go out there and you're gonna do this all by yourself. How has that been working for you? Because most of the time when you hear those conversations, you're hearing them in areas where there's high crime and high violence. So obviously that strategy of not talking at all, not having any type of communication, ain't working either. So making sure that we are working as organizations to figure out what the culture looks like, and creating opportunities for us to see ourselves as companions. Barriers to implementation, again, the things that I told you all before, about, you know, how we can, you know, getting people at all levels to buy into what we're doing. And I mean, keys to success, acknowledging what you want the success to look like in your area. So this is me. And my picture's not on there. Again, I'm not happy about that, but it's okay. Y'all see me up here. Questions?
Well, I'll kick things off. So tell us about some of those first kind of interactions, like go back to the beginning. You know, I think that's kind of a barrier for lots of groups and lots of people. Like, where do they start? What were those first interactions like, and how can you kind of move from those into building kind of momentum?
Yeah, so the first interactions were kind of shaky, you know, like any relationship. Everybody's guarded. We're coming into it, don't want to say, don't want to do too much. But, you know, there were things that were asked for, and it's, why do you need it? You know, sometimes people will ask for access to certain things just to have access to it. Like when you go into it, and this is more, I'm gonna answer this question more so from like an Office of Violence Prevention space, right? Or, someone who is a convener of multiple CVI organizations doing this work. So like, why do you need that data? What's on the website? It's, just get it off of there. But sometimes it's important for me to get it from you all, from law enforcement, because it's important for us in terms of building our relationship to say that we're able to work together to get the information. And then also, well, how many mediations did y'all do? Well, why don't I know that? What is a mediation? What does that even consist of? What is a canvas? What do you mean you canvassing? What is the expectation? So, a lot of that was building what those things look like. Like, understanding that, a shooting response. Anybody know what a shooting response is? Not a law enforcement shooting response, but a CVI shooting response. Okay. Anybody? Okay. For the second time, so within the first 72 hours after a shooting, there's a response that is community-driven. You call in multiple people from the community to really denounce the act of violence. And this happened in our community. We don't like it. We're not going to stand for it. And we are publicly denouncing this event. Now, that's one thing that happens. But then, too, there are other things that can be happening as well. You also may have frontline workers within that space who are just kind of looking around, seeing who's doing what's, kind of who's standing off to the side. Like, okay, well, maybe we can go talk to that person. Like, who, do they look like they're about to go load up and go out and handle the situation? That may be who we need to intervene with. So it's an opportunity for those things to happen. But understanding that is the work that they do. They are not just breaking up fights. That's not just what they're doing.
Thank you for that. Other questions? Right here.
In my experience, can you speak to a little bit more maybe about the validation and trust? Because I think those are probably the two biggest things between the two entities, between the law enforcement and the CVI work, because we're guarded and you're guarded as well. And if nobody chooses to let their guard down, then the work doesn't get done. But at some point, somebody has to champion the idea of maybe leaking a little bit on both sides so that that trust can start to be built and formulated to make the relationship better for the community. Can you speak to that, how both entities could validate one another? Oh, I'm Assistant Chief M.J. Harris from the Greensboro Police Department.
Yeah, so I think that what has to happen in that regard is we got to be careful when we say leak, because I don't want to get that misconstrued. But we are guarded, and we got to recognize why we're guarded too, because that's the important part. We got to recognize that the trust, that has been broken from both entities, and that recognition of that is a key part of how we move forward. I may not like you because when I was on the street, we had an interaction and you were always in my face doing X, Y, Z, and or you may not like me because I was that person who was always, doing something. Anytime something happened in the community, Latisha's name is in it. She is always there, right? But here, again, like I said, now she's showing up 20 years later and she's saying she's different, but she looked the same, but she's saying she's different. So having the time, it may not even be, I don't trust you. Let's just put it out there. I don't trust you. I don't trust you. You don't trust me. Let's start there. We do not trust each other, okay? We acknowledge that we don't trust each other, but we also acknowledge that we want to move and we want to have a solution. So even in saying, I don't trust you right now, this is at the beginning of a relationship, even in saying, I don't trust you right now, I may not trust you, but I trust the goal. So if I can't trust you as a person, I can't trust the goal. And until I can get to the point where I can start building trust in you, I'm gonna continue to stay focused on trusting the goal.
I was gonna maybe also add to that question. So I think there's a couple of things. One is, so there has to be a culture shift, and what has to be understood is that law enforcement is the dominant presence in the world of actual addressing violence. Historically, like, they're the ones that have actually been present. They've been doing it. They're highly trained, highly equipped with technology, with professional capacity. They run the streets, right? However we want to look at it. And when law enforcement interface with people, they're interfacing with people, not potential criminals, right? And when there's a relationship between a CVI organization or someone doing violence prevention and their CBO and then law enforcement has to see them as a true asset that they represent in order to be able to achieve a goal. Because what they represent is a type of actual resource that wasn't previously there. There's someone out there doing work that typically they would have to do that's not even a part of their job description, right? They're doing social work, they're doing social engagement, they're making connections. Law enforcement gets overwhelmed with having to do those things in order to build the type of relationships in the community where they can't prevent violence. But their actual skill set is to suppress violence. Their job is when someone commits a crime, hold them accountable for it. Their presence is a form of prevention. And the other piece is when we say trust, right? Who is law enforcement having to actually learn to trust? The actual workers doing the work, they're out there trying to actually help prevent violence. They're not committing crimes, right? And if they are potentially committing crimes, for sure they don't have guns in their hands and out there shooting and killing people, which is the common objective and goal. So really, what I would argue or encourage is that if law enforcement can begin to prioritize certain priorities, right? When they begin to look at these actual outreach workers and they begin to see this person may have been doing this, but he's not doing this anymore. He's out in the community putting himself on the line. Let's leverage that. Let's benefit from that. Even if you feel like maybe he's not all the way 100, what's the worst, well, meaning authentic, what's the worst he's doing other than actually trying to help? Maybe he's selling some drugs on the side. If you catch him, hold him accountable, right? Because some of that happens. But what I want to encourage law enforcement is to possibly look and say, you know what? Here's this asset that wasn't previously there. How do I learn to leverage it and then also to protect and serve it? Right? How do I protect and serve also these individuals that's working in this field to try to actually prevent violence? And I think if you begin to actually see people with the guns and the high technology and the communication systems interacting with the actual outreach workers in that way, where they begin to see, oh, these guys also trying to protect me, right? Because that's what their job is. You'll begin to see that those individuals are also shifting their behavior and learn to leverage you. And I say this from a standpoint, and I interact with the field, right? And I'm not the mindset of trying to encourage the community not to actually communicate when they see something happens, right? You know the whole one, you see something, say something, and most people say, oh, we're not really into that particular culture. That's for criminals. That's for people committing crimes. That's for the outlaws. But when you build trust with your actual CVI workers, and they're out in the communities, you begin to see that they will encourage the community to leverage the only option they have, which is the police, to protect themselves, right? But they won't tell them to do that if they themselves feels like, oh, law enforcement don't even trust me, and I'm out here trying to help them. So just want to encourage that. I think you guys have the advantage, right, particularly with the CVI workers, to show them that you're trustworthy.
Tracy.
I just want to add to this conversation. One of the things, and I'm going to give a shameless plug for Offices of Violence Prevention, Offices of Community Safety. That is your intermediary. Those are the people that are the neutral parties. They talk to law enforcement and they talk to CVI. Put them in the room and they can get you together, right? That is how you build trust, because both parties trust that entity. They talk to that entity. That's the only common ground you may have. If you say, I don't like you and I don't like you, okay, but y'all like me.
Yep.
Show up for me, right? I'll get you to talk together. One of the things I think is really important is to really understand the language that both parties use. Because when you use the word leak, the cringe, everybody in here that do CVI cringed. Like they understood what you said, but it was the terminology that you used. And by times when we don't understand what the common language is in a particular field, it causes distrust. Because immediately they say, ooh, they felt really funny about what that one word, and that can change everything. So understanding what the language is that people use in their respective fields, knowing that you may be saying the same thing just in a different way, but one word can change everything. But also just really utilize your offices of violence prevention. If you don't have one, advocate to get one, because there will be a lot of things that you would not be able to do because that entity is neutral. So that is all I'm going to say. I also will say, that's all I'm going to say. I will also say that thinking about this continuum of public safety, that's where you get everybody involved, right? Your CVI space is going to be doing your primary prevention. They're going to be doing your intervention. Tertiary law enforcement is after the fact, right? For predominantly, you do some things that are prevention as well, but predominantly it's after something has happened is when you show up. The people that help you prevent that is the CVI workers, right? They're the ones that's hearing what's going on the street. They might not tell you about it, but they're intervening so that it doesn't happen. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah, and to that, also, when you leave the scene, they're still there. So that's another important part to keep in mind is they're still there.
What I want to add is usually you can talk to your program directors of your CVI because they're not too far removed from the street, so they still have access. But they also have access to you all, and they are trusted by their community. So use them.
Yep.
As a program director, please don't talk to my frontline workers, because when they go home at night, I have to worry about them while y'all are sleeping at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm getting phone calls and I have to jump in front of a gun. Y'all are asleep. However, we're up making sure that that homicide doesn't happen, and that's not another tick in our city's homicides raising. There are countless amount of times that we put our body as the shield where you all wear vests and have guns. That is our life. That is our life's work. Because some of us used to be part of the problem, and now we have become part of the solution.
Yep.
And so it's not that we do not want to help you all and we do not want to talk to you all. But we also have that distrust, because when we were in the streets, there were some of you that were a little rough with us because we were a little rough as well. So talk to the ones that you can talk to and be okay with the ones that don't talk to you.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's really the key to this work is understanding. We got to understand the space that we are all coming to this from. And, utilizing your offices of violence prevention is a key, because we are the intermediaries. We are neutral. So,
One last question.
Thanks, Latisha. I have 20 questions, but Scott said I can only ask one. So given that, one of the things we've been interested in the role of technology and bridging the gap between CVI and law enforcement. Can you talk about what aspects of technology that would be most useful for both groups and figuring out how we address this issue in a way that protects everyone?
Yeah. So in regards to your 20 questions, my contact information is up there. Yeah, and I do not mind answering questions. This work is important to me, so whatever I can do to assist anybody in the room with moving forward, I'm all for it. In regards to technology, I will say what I have seen, and I had the great opportunity to travel the country with my counterpart, Tracy Campbell, with the University of Chicago Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy. And we went to five different cities. And one of the things I saw that people had is the Citizen app, right? And they used it. Like we got the Citizen app in Greensboro, but you know, nobody really put nothing up there. It's like, oh, my dog's missing. It's like, okay, whatever. But I saw that in action to support in a way that would be beneficial to CVI workers. Like, for example, we were in Chicago. So we're sitting in class in Chicago, and all the Chicago people start looking at their phones. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So all the Chicago people are looking down at their phones, and they're like, oh, yeah, somebody just got shot, right? And in that space, what we saw is these are all people who are executive directors and above. So phone goes off. People on the phone with their teams, they're texting, well, who's on there? Who's at it? Okay, what do we know? Where are we in this? They didn't have to get a phone call from, you know, anybody to engage, because the Citizen app is really community driven. Like, the community sees something and then they report it. I know some people use Nextdoor. Those things are kind of, you know, it can be iffy. So I would say those are starting points. But then also, one of the benefits to having an Office of Violence Prevention or Community Safety is one of the things that we're trying to do is be transparent with data. So we released a quarterly report that talks about the number of mediations. It breaks down, you know, what are mediations, what are peace agreements, gives all of this information, and it's readily available for law enforcement and other partners who want to know, you know, what they're doing. You know, what does this mean? So here you go, here's their report. So I say Citizen apps and like those apps are a start, but what we don't want, what cannot happen is we cannot be on a shared database together. Like we can't do that, because it is important that you keep those things separate. Because then you start getting into, it may not be the law enforcement entity itself. Any lawyers in here before I say this? Okay. You know, it may be somebody's legal team. And they start doing stuff like, well, we're going to subpoena the records. Well, we're going to subpoena the records of those CVI workers. So we're going to go into their office and we're going to pull their records. And we're going to, because we want to know who they talked to, what this person did, what that person did. So that's why that can be dangerous if we start operating like that.
Well, we are right at time. So again, let's put your hands together and thank Latisha here. Really appreciate it. Contact information is right there, so if you haven't taken a picture of it, and we'll put the correct slides on the app, and hopefully
Yeah, because I need my
get that
pictures.
fixed. Sorry about that. But thank you all. They're probably going to start taking down these walls here in about 2 minutes. So appreciate it. Probably, I'm sure you'll stick around a little bit afterward.
Yep.
Is that right?
I was just going to say email is best. I mean, that's my work phone. Email is best.
Email is best. You heard it here. All right. Thank you, everyone.